All right, hello friends listening in Canada, Montana, Jamaica, Siam, of course our friends in Ireland, and our friends in Idaho. We've gone from Montana to Idaho.
Both now.
Bat Flips and Maple Dips is growing. This is episode 14. Don't forget, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/batflipsmapledips. We're on Twitter and Instagram at BFMD Podcast. All the streams, Spotify, Google Play Music, iTunes, SoundCloud. No Nexopia still. I'm sorry, guys. No Nexopia. We can't crack that Nexopia crowd. My name's Clayton Croker, coming to you from Saskatoon. To my left here, we have Justin. Don't call me Mr. Anderson. And, of course, the Maritime Mistress Maker and the president of the Alan Doyle Fan Club. We have Patrick Marsh. Usually we kick the podcast off by talking about the Jays, because this is a Blue Jays podcast. And, of course, big week for the Jays. Josh Donaldson, he gone. Of course, it's always fun when we play Baltimore, but for the first time, we have a guest on Bat Flips and Maple Dips. I don't know about you, Justin, Patrick, but I'm excited. On a scale of 1 to 10, Patrick, our guest coming up, are you pretty excited, bud?
I would say I am an 11 out of 10. I like breaking rules.
You're always breaking the rules every week.
Justin, can you top 11?
No, because that's against the thing. It's like saying 110%. It's not possible.
I hate people that do the 110%. Joining us right now on Skype, again, the first guest in Bat Flips Maple Dips history. He is from Saskatoon, so this is kind of a big deal for me and Justin here.
Great.
He has worked for CBC News and Sports as a reporter in Calgary and Saskatoon. He's now based in Toronto. If you are a fan of curling, you know this guy. Devin Heroux joins us on the line. Devin, thanks for joining us, and how's it going?
Great expectations with an 11 out of 10, 110%. That's what I'm going to give you guys. Hey,
Awesome.
It's great to be joined on the show with you guys. And, of course, I live right across from, I'm going to call it the Sky Dome. I think we all want to call it the Sky Dome still. I live right across the street from the Sky Dome. And it was my intention when I moved here that I'd be casually strolling over to Blue Jays playoff games. That's not the case.
No.
And you can imagine the shockwave sent through this city when Donaldson was traded. Some like it, some don't, some on the fence. But they're talking about ball, but we're not talking about playoff baseball in this city, of course.
Well, one thing we want to talk to you about, Devin, is, of course, curling, the Little League World Series. But from my standpoint, I'm going to be a little selfish here and kick things off. Because I remember Devin Heroux starting his kind of broadcast career, if you will, at Bedford Road Collegiate, in the gymnasium, calling games for the Bedford Road Invitational Tournament. So Devin Heroux would spit hot fire on the mic, and it made me want to do the same thing. So at Holy Cross High School, I started calling the high school games. Like, I started being the guy like, oh, Steve Bariski from 3, you know? Because Devin did that at Brits, and he would be all over the media there. And I was like, man, I want to do this, you know? So I got to kind of thank Devin Heroux for kind of getting me into the broadcast, because now I'm a morning show host in my hometown. Devin, my question is this, because you started out as a young reporter looking up to more senior reporters. Now you are in those senior reporter shoes where young reporters are looking up to you. Do you ever look back and think like, man, this is crazy. Like, just a few years ago, I was looking up to these guys. Now people are looking up to me.
Well, first of all, Clayton, you make me sound old, so thank you for that.
Sorry,
bud. That. No, look. Every single day I wake up, and let me tell you a story, because right when I was getting started at Bedford Road, and look, I grew up, we moved to the east side. I was a few blocks away from Holy Cross. I could have went to that school, but I wanted to go to Bedford Road because of the Brit. And yes, I got a little excited behind the microphone, and I still carry that excitement with me today. But when I was 16 years old, you guys, I came to Toronto all by myself. I don't know why my parents let me do that, but I came here and I walked by the massive CBC building that I now live 5 minutes away from. And I went, I'm going to work in that building one day. And I also actually believed that my face was going to be on the side of the building. So I'm still climbing. I'm still working towards that. But I wake up every single morning and I go, I have no idea how I'm able to do this. I think I have the best job in the world. It's incredible to me that the CBC has allowed me to travel around the world, specifically over the last couple of years, watching sports. I've had a front row seat to some of the most dramatic sporting moments for Canada and other sports teams over the last few years. And Yeah, I think I'm getting paid to watch sports, and it's the best thing in the world. And yes, it all started back at Bedford Road, a high school basketball tournament that I think is still considered to be one of the best basketball tournaments. I don't think it's at the level it was maybe when we were there. I think that was sort of the heyday of Brit. But man, what a tournament. I'm so fortunate to come from Saskatoon because it's a smaller market where I could screw up. I could make rookie mistakes. I'll never forget interviewing Brian Towers for the first time, being scared. Can we swear on this? Being scared out of my pants, talking to him. So I'm so grateful for what I was able to do in Saskatoon because it let me screw up. It let me try new things. And it sort of let me get to the point where I am today. So, yeah, I pinch myself every morning.
Imagine having Brian Towers as your Pee Wee baseball coach. That was my reality when I was 13 years old.
Are you serious?
Scariest coach ever, because he wouldn't get mad, but he would get like quiet mad, which is way worse than yelling
disappointed
mad. Just why didn't you cover first base on that pitch there, Clayton? I forgot. Oh, you forgot. And then just silence, and you're like, oh man, this legendary football coach hates me. Dev, one more thing about Brit. Can I guess your number one Brit moments and see if I can predict it here?
Do it. Try
Robert
it because
Sacre.
I need a little reminding.
Robert Sacre.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably have to say that, and you know, I gotta admit, Clayton, at this point, it's all sort of a blur to me. This crazy loud gym, me eating horribly for 4 or 5 days every January, and being sort of in the twilight zone that Brit is. But yeah, I sometimes forget the names and the players that went through there. But yeah, Robert Sacre was one of the guys. And of course, he went on to Gonzaga, right, and then into the NBA. And, but okay, as a player, Robert Sacre, but I gotta admit, those Friday night thrillers at Holy Cross would always be, and trust me, I loved to hate Holy Cross.
Everyone did.
I mean, look, Chris Bodner and I are best buds, the Holman family, all of those guys who are sort of legends of the Brit. But that Friday night game when all of those East Siders would pack our gym and bring their obnoxious noise and everything else they would bring with them into that gym drove me crazy. And they always won that game. And Barry always found a way to win the game. And it drove me crazy, but it was awesome, right? And so Robert Sacre and Holy Cross, love them, hate them. They made for an electric atmosphere.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I wish I would have grown up in Saskatoon. I grew up the road in Lloydminster, so I don't have any of this crazy excitement stories. I wish I was here for that. So you just finished covering Canada's national team at the Little League World Series down in Williamsport. I mean, for those of us who haven't been there, it's just seeing the pictures of the facility and all the video that comes out of it, and it's the cool stories like Dio Gamma. Like, can you talk a bit about that? When you were down there with covering the team, when they found out that Dio was going to be allowed to come play, what was the mood like?
Yeah, and you know, I should let you guys know that I had no idea what I was getting into, which is usually the case with every story that I walk into in my career now. But look, I mean, the reality of it is CBC Sports, at least from my perspective, and I was the sports editor of the University of Saskatchewan newspaper, and on and on and on. And I think what I realized early in my career is that I wanted to make people who don't care about sports care about sports. And how do we do that? We bring the human element, the human existence that is so relatable to everything we go about in our lives. And so that's sort of the lens in which I try and tell every sports story I write or I broadcast. Right. And so when we heard this story of Dio Gamma, and of course CBC had the broadcast rights to the national championships in Mirabel, Quebec, and I went there and I didn't know what the level of baseball was going to be like, and I was blown away. I mean, credit to us. I think we did a great job. The crew was exceptional. The camera angles, we brought a big broadcast feel. Mm-hmm. But the way these guys were throwing heat and hitting the ball, and this team from Wally, BC, exceptional. You get to know them. You get to know some of the names. And then, of course, the name that sort of became the face of the team, Dio Gamma, 13 years old, born in Las Vegas, has a complicated family past. Let's call it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
We get wind the day after the championship from his father that he's not going to be able to go travel with the team because of immigration issues. We could spend a lot of time getting into the immigration issues. We're not going to do that.
Right.
All I knew as a reporter is that I'm going to tell this story. I'm going to make it as factual as possible. It kind of spread across the country like wildfire, and a remarkable thing happened, and I'm glad we're talking about it because I haven't been able to share this story. So here's a little bit of a exclusive tidbit for the podcast. I was actually on the phone with a member of parliament from Whalley, BC, when the decision was coming down in real time on the Wednesday night from the federal immigration minister. It's one of the great moments in my career, to be honest. I get chills thinking about it because there I am on the phone, texting with the father of Dio Gama, on the phone with the MP, and we get this decision all at the same time that Dio Gama is going to be able to go. It was awesome. We were able to get out the breaking news. And the next morning, I walked into the office and I told my bosses that it would be a great disservice to our audience and to, as a Canadian broadcaster, not to go to Williamsport. Mm-hmm. 2 hours later, I was in a car driving south to Williamsport. I was only going to be there for 2 days. 2 days turned into a week, and I was on the field, the practice field, when Dio Gama walked onto the field in his Canada jersey, fresh after getting all the photos and all the hoopla. It was magical, you guys.
That's great.
He was such a part of this team, and they were like a family, and I get goosebumps thinking about that moment when he walked onto that lush green grass just steps away from historic Lamity Stadium where he joined his Canadian teammates. It's one of the great moments, like I said, in my career.
Wow. Yeah, that's an incredible story. I know. Thanks for sharing that exclusive tidbit. That's something that nobody knew. So yeah, thanks for that. One other guy I want to talk about, kind of the internet sensation of the Little League World Series, Big Al, who hits dingers like this. I can't remember. Besides, I know Patrick thinks that Monet Davis was perhaps one of the biggest stories of the Little League World Series in recent memory. But in terms of an internet sensation, I think Big Al is like right up there. Like he captured headlines not just in the sporting world, but he was on every newscast throughout North America, really, and I'm even guessing across the pond too. But can you think of a guy who kind of stole that viral spotlight more than Big Al, like in any sport recently?
No, not at all. And funny about that, and this is probably my biggest regret, because I was so hyper focused on telling the story of this Canadian team, and they had some really good stuff going on. Look, had they gone and lost that wild game against Spain on that Saturday night, I probably would have looked for different story angles, and Big Al was on my list. I never found him, and I searched. But the guy, so here's the thing you guys need to know. Like, I know we sort of get a sense in Canada of what the Little League World Series is like, and ESPN, you get the TSN feed and the whole bit. Mm-hmm. I had ESPN on in my hotel room whenever I was in my room on ESPN. You guys would not believe the programming around this Little League World Series. I'm talking 24/7 Little League World Series. Every one of their shows, a look back at past championships, in-depth interviews, and then who's on my screen every waking moment? Big Al. And the best part of it all is Big Al gave us a Williamsport tour, Big Al style.
That's
and
awesome.
It was the most hilarious thing I've ever seen.
Oh, I just remember seeing all the pictures in the video when the Phillies and Mets played their classic game down there, with Rhys Hoskins posting a video with him, and then Bautista taking the picture. Just like the way that those MLB guys kind of embraced his celebrity too, which was really, really cool.
Can I make a quick point about that? Because I think it's brilliant. Of course, it was a second annual. It's going to be an annual thing, Major League Little League Classic, where they bring in the teams. And I believe is it Pittsburgh in the Phillies, or I can't remember who's going to be in the game next year. It's a Pittsburgh team. Mm-hmm. I believe that's going to be playing in that game. But whatever it is, I think the major leaguers have more fun than the little leaguers. Like, you see these guys coming off the plane and on the bus. I saw them at the ballpark. Like, in a way, you guys, sort of the general arching takeaway for me was that it reminds us of the purity of sport, right? Because these kids aren't getting paid. They're doing it for the love of the game. The post-game press conferences were my favorite part, because these little kids would roll into like this MLB style post-game conference room and their eyes would light up. Some of them would ooh and ah. And what they would do is they would sort of weave in between being a kid and just being like emotional and pouring their heart out. And then almost like a switch goes off, reminding like, oh, I'm supposed to be like a cool major leaguer and be really composed and say all the really horrible, cliche, boring things we get that we despise. So to me, there was a big thing about the purity of sport. And I think for those major leaguers, if for 3 hours in Williamsport, they were reminded of how they learned to love a game they're getting paid millions to do, and complain about and lose sight of what this is all really about. Well, so that's kind of my touchy-feely sort of thing about that.
Yeah, and I can imagine for some of those guys, too, who maybe come from poorer countries, they never would have got to play in a stadium like that, in an atmosphere like that as kids. So it probably gives them a bit of a sense of almost fulfillment that they have they've made it to the Little League World Series in a sense now.
Well, and imagine this, you guys. Like, I mean, here's 12-year-old Nate Kalina, that's 100 pounds soaking wet. Bases loaded, 2 out, Canada leading in this dramatic game. He's got to make the play, makes that catch, scoops it just off the mound before, who knows, it might have gone up the middle and Spain might have won that game. But I'm just watching these kids, 7,000 people on an idyllic night, a Saturday night in Williamsport, bright lights. It doesn't get much bigger than that. And that's why so many of the greats, when you look at the list, it's just staggering when you look at the list of players that have gone through the Little League World Series, because it just grooms these kids to get ice in their veins for big moments. And that was one of them that stuck out to me.
Wow. So we talked a little bit about the purity of sport there, which kind of helps us shift gears into the Olympics, because that was something that you were a big part of this year in Pyeongchang. You covered the figure skating, the speed skating, and the sliding, right? As well as the curling?
And there were a few other things in there. I think I got up to the Moguls Hill and watched Mikhail Kingsbury win gold, and I know nothing about moguls and had a bit of a panic attack going up this mountain going, what the hell am I going to write about? and it's one of those moments where you kind of just have to remind yourself, guys, I'm just telling a story. What is the story on this night? And to be honest, that story is actually one of my favorite stories I've ever written in my career, because Kingsbury won gold. I found his parents. It started to snow. Like it was like a dream, like a snow globe. And so that would be some other advice to journalists, is don't psych yourself out. At the end of the day, we're just telling stories, and a story will always sort of unfurl right in front of your eyes. But yes, I got around at the Olympics.
How was your experience in South Korea? Were there a lot of those, special moments that just seemed to sort of come organically?
Yeah, and I've been trying over the last few months, because getting to the Olympics when you're a sports reporter is like your dream. It's a pinnacle, right? And you work so hard to get there, and then you're there, and I don't want to make it sound like I was underwhelmed by it, but you're in such a bubble that in a way the Olympics could have been held in any place in the world and I would have had no idea where the hell I was, because it is such a bubble, and you literally go from a bus to a venue, and I slept maybe 3 hours a night for 40 consecutive days, and it's like a twilight zone and you're going through the motions. But That being said, I think to me, I figured out the magic of the Olympics from going to all of these venues and watching these moments and watching champions rise up and watching people who have trained their entire lives completely fall apart. And I don't want to segue to Canada's curling team, but in a way, the pressure of that moment became really great on the Canadian curlers. So that's a moment in my career that I'll never forget, because Canada had never not medaled at the Olympics and both teams were off the podium. That was a remarkable moment that stands out. I think Ted Jan Bloemen, the speed skater who moved from the Netherlands 4 years ago to Canada, took a huge chance. I moved to Calgary a year ago right now to spend time at the Oval and up at Canada Olympic Park, building relationships with all these people. I wasn't filing. I literally was just hanging out. I was hanging out, building relationships. And Ted Jan Bloemen, on one October day, set the new Oval record for the 10,000 meter. And I interviewed him immediately after, and he told me in that interview that he felt like something magical could happen in October, you guys. And guess what? He won the gold medal at the Olympics in the 10,000 meter.
Wow.
And I was able to craft a story going back to October on the day Ted Jan Bloemen, when nobody else was at the rink and I was there watching him, when he set the record for the Oval, tell me all those months earlier that something magical could happen. So there were these sort of crazy synchronicities that just sort of unfolded. I felt really prepared. I felt like I knew the athletes really well. And just for a personal note for me, not to pump my tires, but for me, it was so sweet to be so dialed in with my storytelling, because you have this fear that you get one shot under the biggest pressure of your career to capture a moment. And I felt like for 17 days in South Korea that I didn't screw up. and that was my biggest fear. Don't screw it up. And make Canadians feel like they were sort of with me along with the journey. And I had a blast.
Awesome.
Do you think you'll end up back at the Olympics in 2022?
Before that, 2020. I'm already doing my research for 2020, and I think Canada is going to have an extraordinary Olympics. I think it's going to be really fun. If you look at the young tennis players who could do well, if you look at Brooke Henderson on the golf course who could do well, you look at somebody like Taylor Ruck, the Canadian sensation in the pool, Penny Alexiak. If Andre DeGrasse gets his act together, I think 2020 could be a remarkable summer games for Canada. So I think you'll see me at the 2020 Olympics. And I just want to go to the Olympics for the rest of my career. I told my bosses when I got back, if I do this for the rest of my life, I'll be pretty happy. And I've been given every indication that I should prepare to be going to the Olympics. So that's exciting. And to be able to share the stories of amateur athletes with Canadians is a great honor for me, because I think all of us collectively can do a better job of pushing up our amateur athletes. They don't just pop up once every 4 years. And now that I'm more dialed in and following a lot of their journeys very closely behind the scenes, I want to do whatever I can to highlight just how much goes into that singular moment every 4 years, and that they aren't sort of this flash in the pan that Canadians don't really know, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from. And I find it very appropriate that you have such a strong passion for the Olympics and such a strong passion for all these sports that you cover, especially curling. Of course, we got to talk about curling because you're known for having this passion. You wrote a beautiful piece about Sandra Schmirler, who won Olympic gold in 1998 in curling in Nagano, Japan. I think you wrote the piece a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Sandra and what curling means to you? And I know Justin is a big curler, so I kind of let you guys go off on curling for a while here.
And let me just preface by what I'm going to talk about Sandra and what she meant to me by saying I have absolutely no idea how this all happened, but I literally felt like I was not in the curling world one day and that I woke up and this follows me absolutely everywhere I go now. I have conversations around this entire country of people saying, "You're the curling guy." I don't know how it happened, but I've kind of eased into the idea that if I'm the curling guy for my career, I think I'm okay with that. But look, for Sandra Schmirler, I'll never forget it. Look, I was in a hotel in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, in the middle of the night, watching her and that dream team win Olympic gold, and it's as clear to me right now as I talk to you guys as it was when I was watching it. And I think either the title or my lead or whatever is that this was a woman who was larger than life. And I am so damn proud to be from Saskatchewan, and people laugh at me in Toronto or wherever I go because I feel like I'm a Saskatchewan ambassador. But I think what really struck a nerve with the Schmirler team and made them so likable is what you see is what you get. And guys, can you imagine this? Like, think about this moment for a second. So Sandra Schmirler, Joe McCusker, Marcia Gooderite, Jan Beckford, like these women were my superheroes growing up. They're like super women to me. And there I am at my first Olympics broadcasting alongside Joan freaking McCusker. Like, are you kidding me? 20 years after they won Olympic gold. Like there have been storybook moments like this in my career, but this one stands out with Joan, and just hearing the behind the scenes stories about how, like, Joan and I have cried in bars talking about this team for so many nights, you guys, because she has told me stories about Sandra and what was going on with her children, what was going on with the team, what was going on when she found out she had cancer. I get emotional talking about it. The night they found out that Sandra probably wasn't going to make it, the last phone calls, like, I've heard all of this. And so they are, what you saw on the ice is what you got. They were like the girls, the moms, the sisters, the cousins, the friends who were next door. Quintessentially Saskatchewan to a T. And my great regret for that team and for Sandra Schmirler is I will always wonder just how good that team could have been in terms of setting all the records. Look, they never lost an international bond spill that they played in. They were perfect in every international bond spill they played in. And like that shot in 1997 in the Olympic trials, the first ever ones at the Keystone Center in Brandon against Shannon Kleibrink, the in-off. We can all see it. We all know it.
Yep.
I was thinking about that. Yep.
Like, I think, and I'm biased, I'll openly admit it, but I think that's the greatest curling shot under pressure, because it also came at a time when you don't have the technology and everything we know about the way a rock curls and the sweeping techniques and everything of how the game has evolved. So when you consider that shot under how little we knew about curling and everything about the game at that point, I think it's the best shot under pressure ever in the game. And then they go on and they do such an admirable job to win gold. Her life cut short. But I get the great pleasure of traveling not only around Canada, but around the world. I get to talk to people internationally about Sandra Schmirler, and you should just see the way people revere her. And so she's one of these great people in sport and in life who just represents so much more than just throwing a rock up and down a sheet of ice, and the legacy she's created with the telethon and on and on and on and on. We could do a whole podcast on Sandra Schmirler, but she meant the world to me because she made me believe, this is my final thought, she made me believe in something greater than our province, that we could be from Saskatchewan and that we could leave our prairie borders and go out and kick ass. That's what she represented to me.
No, I completely agree with you on everything you've said. As somebody who was born, I was 5 years old when they won that Olympic gold medal, so I don't really remember it. But I've watched the game. I've seen the in-off from the trials, and I mean, my friends and I, whenever we call it in-off, we still call it the Sandra.
Right.
Do you want to try the Sandra? Yeah, totally. Hell yeah, we do. Yeah, let's do the Sandra. So she's been described to me by a close friend as the Wayne Gretzky of curling, because she was just so far ahead of her time when she played. Like, when you think of Wayne Gretzky playing hockey, he was light years ahead of the rest of the league at that time, and that was how Sandra was in the late '90s with her team. Like, they were just so far ahead of the competition. You talk about how they were defeated, right?
Sorry, yeah. I'm totally interrupting.
No, that's fine.
You mentioned Sandra Schmirler and Wayne Gretzky in the same sentence, and it reminds me of a story. And I hope Joe McCusker does not mind me telling you guys this story. But at the 1998 Olympics, when Wayne and the Dream Team were all there, listen to this story. This is awesome. I don't know how public this is, but Joan and Jan Becker and Schmirler and them, they all go to Canada House, right? And Mike Harris is a good friend of mine who was there at those Olympics as well and won silver. So we've all talked about this. They have told me stories that one day I hope to put into a book. But curlers at the 1998 Olympics were like the overweight, like, why are you here sort of Olympians, right? Like, they were like the laughing stock. Nobody thought at that point that curlers should be at the Olympics. So as the game sort of developed, this is awesome. Sandra and Joan and Jan and Marcia and all them, they sort of became the superstars, right? Like, they were the girls from Saskatchewan who were the curlers. So one day, towards the end of the Olympics, they roll into Canada House and the men's hockey team is there. Wayne Gretzky's there. And Sandra and they all walk in, and Sandra was always a little bit shy and sort of, I don't know if they're going to know who I am. And they walk into the room. And Joan, who's like this, like over the top, she's loud, she's energetic. She's like, are you kidding me? Let's get in here. Let's talk to them. The hockey players, Wayne Gretzky and all of them, came over and introduced themselves to Sandra Schmirler and the curling team. That's the star power these gals from Saskatchewan had in that room. And I guess Jan Becker is a bit of a joker, and she was joking about, I wonder if they're going to want our autograph. And it turns out, like, they did. They wanted their autograph.
Incredible.
And I just think that is such an incredible story. I don't know how widely known it was, but that sort of just gives you a little bit of perspective of how popular these small town girls from Saskatchewan who threw rocks up and down a curling sheet were.
I feel bad for Patrick here because he doesn't get the Saskatchewan nostalgia behind Sandra Schmirler and that rink. Because, again, everyone from Saskatchewan is so proud of Sandra Schmirler. And when you start talking about her, all those feels and all those emotions come out. Because, again, here in Saskatchewan, growing up here, I remember two Olympic moments, Sandra Schmirler and Donovan Bailey. Yeah. Growing up, I remember those two moments. Those were awesome. Those were just awesome. And I can't believe you shared those stories with us, Devin. I mean, you exceeded our expectations and then some. And again, as two Sasky boys, we couldn't be more thrilled to have a fellow Sasky guy on here. Yeah. Hopefully when you're at Shell Lake next time, I'll be at the Briskies cabin. I'll be walking on over to Laser Bob's. Hopefully you and Braden are there. We can have a couple pints. Maybe listen to Rod Peterson call a Rider game or something like that. I know that's like your favorite thing to do ever. We're not going to get on the Riders here because...
we could talk about the Riders for an hour.
I'm a Winnipeg Blue Bomber fan. I didn't want to admit that, but we don't want to talk about the Riders because we can go off and I'll just get angry because they just lost Labor Day. But Devin, thanks a bunch for having us on the podcast. Or having us on the podcast. I feel like he's the host of the show with how he just did this entire thing. Like,
It's awesome.
Look, I'll give you a prediction right now. Riders and Ticats in the Grey Cup in Edmonton.
I'm just going to hang up on you
I
right
love
now,
that.
actually. No, after 30 minutes of gold and you do that to me, hey? One thing I will say, Holy Cross at Brits, they hate us because they ain't us, okay? And we would pack that gym. Everyone hates us at that tournament, but we always show up, and everyone chirps us. I'm not going to let that slide. And, yeah, you are right. Chris Bodner and the Holman, some of the best basketball players to grace that court. So I loved your insight, man. It was awesome. And we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us about just your experiences, man. You're a great storyteller, and we appreciate it, man.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for the opportunity.
What an unreal first guest on the Bat Flips Maple Dips podcast. Like, Devin Heroux just set the bar very, very high. I don't think we can have another guest anymore because it's just going to be a major letdown.
Nobody's going to want to come on.
No one's going to want to come on.
How do you follow that act?
He made it feel like he was hosting the podcast. That's how good he was.
It's like following a Matthew McConaughey Oscar speech. You just can't.
And again, for me, he's one of the reasons I got into broadcasting. Like, he's a journalist. He's legit.
Yeah,
he's one of the
he's
best
incredible.
that CBC has.
Yeah.
I make mediocre jokes in a media market in Saskatoon. So, I mean, it's kind of different. But, no, thanks again, Devin. Let's talk about some baseball. Let's talk about the week that was, because our buddy Justin here, he correctly predicted the record of the Jays. They went 2-6.
I think it was Patrick.
Patrick did. Sorry, I got my names mixed up again. Patrick, you correctly did it. So, you get the sarcastic slow clap.
I'll take the credit though. I mean, I still can't believe I was the high guy at 3 wins last week, and we didn't even make 3. Brutal.
Good for
we're
you,
a great,
man.
We're a great football team.
Good for you.
Baseball.
Yeah, so we went 2-6. We got swept by the Trash Birds now,
Oh man.
aka Baltimore. Are we the Trash Birds now?
No, they're the trash
They're
birds.
still really
We're
bad.
the cool birds.
They're still really bad. I know Patrick and I had this conversation when we were getting swept by them. I messaged him. I said, "Are we the Trash Birds now?" And Patrick was like, "No, they still only have 40 wins.
That's true.
Not even we're that bad."
Again, though, the losses were bad.
No, they weren't great.
We talked about the 7-0 loss, but that 12-5 killing, and then we lost 10-5. Like, what's going on with our team? Because, I mean, we expect to score more than 5 runs, but still, 5 runs isn't bad. But our pitching, allowing 12 runs and 10 runs, what's going on, guys? Like, what do we need to do to get our pitching to the level it was a few years ago?
Well, the first step is going to be to fire a pitching coach. And then the second thing is going to be take all these guys, all these losers we have in the bullpen, and shoot them in a rocket right into the sun.
Okay, shoot him in a rocket to the sun. I was like, we're not just going to commit murder because they can't pitch a baseball.
It's always the rocket into the sun.
It's
every
my
week.
job to overreact, Patrick. It's my job to overreact.
Well, we're sending them all into the sun. I can say now I'm very, very firmly, now more than ever, off the Pannone hype train.
Thank God.
RIP, it lasted all of, 2 weeks? Not even?
Maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah. Was it even that long? Maybe 6 days.
Maybe 8.
Yeah. Ugh. That was an ugly game. What was crazy to me was that with the 12-5 game, we had so many players who had multi-hit games, and we still left 10 guys on base again.
Ugh. Yeah, it's a struggle this year.
But the one thing is, Danny Jansen has been a very good bright spot because not only is he playing well, but he's a young star that is playing well. He's still hitting over 300. McKinney, Gurriel, they're still hitting over 300. So our bats are still performing well. It's just the pitching. And it's no surprise the Blue Jay pitching has been the Achilles heel of this team for a long, long time. But are you guys just sick and tired of our bats showing up every night? Well, almost every night. I mean, that Miami series, they were a little off. But and then our pitching just letting them down.
Yep, totally. What's frustrating is if you look at the lineup right now, and we have a bunch of players who have played kind of most of the whole season, but not really because everybody needs a day off. And guys like Aledmus Diaz have 17 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 10 other guys on our team that have similar stat lines. They're all batting in and around 250. They all got close to 20 or 20 home runs. And so there's a balance to the offense, but yet somehow, the pitching has been so god awful. They are just liquid shit.
Well, I was watching the first inning of tonight's game, and when Jonathan Davis made his big league debut, he was the 10th Blue Jay this season to make his big league debut.
Ugh.
And I mean, that can be a good thing or a bad thing.
It's a bad thing
this
year.
We've had some good debuts. Like we've had Gurriel play well, we've had Jansen play well, we've seen some good stuff from Ryan Baraki.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there have been some bright spots, and there's going to be ups and downs. You have rookie players who are getting their first taste of big league ball, and this is what the rebuild is. We all kind of, well, the three of us anyway, expected this to be how the season would go. But I don't know if we expected it to be kind of this much of a roller coaster ride.
The one thing is, though, we came back against Miami. We had that 2-1 series win, that clutch win. Justin Smoke. We got to talk about
Daddy.
Smoke Daddy. But can we also talk about John Gibbons with the managerial move to put him in, pinch hitting in the ninth inning? I understand that there aren't a lot of John Gibbons fans who listen to this podcast. But John Gibbons putting in Smoke there was a pretty good move. Move of the year by him, because I can't really remember any other moves. But do you think that John Gibbons obviously didn't save his job with that move? But to all the Gibby haters out there, did he prove something to them with that move?
Yeah.
To me,
He must have. Yeah.
Because Gibby gets a lot of heat, and I'm a big Gibby fan. You guys kind of chirp Gibby a little bit, but I love Gibby. Gibby has always been a favorite of mine just because he's Gibby, you know? He looks drunk half the time. He's got his GIF Twitter page, you know? He's hilarious. And there are moments where, yes, he screws the pooch, a.k.a. fucks the dog. But at the same time, he has moments where he rips into Kevin Pillar for an awful base running mistake. And you think at that point of the season, why is a manager ripping into a player? Who cares? Whatever. But that just shows that he still cares. He still cares about his players. He still cares about winning games because he's putting in guys in the ninth inning who are hitting grand slams for the win. Yeah. I love that. McKinney had another good game, 3 for 5 in the leadoff spots. Do you think he has a future as a leadoff hitter? If not for the Jays, someone else? Because this McKinney guy is starting to impress me a little bit.
He's looking good.
Yeah, I kind of... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he's playing great defense in left field too, which is something that can't be kind of overlooked. We've had a history with Teoscar Hernandez out there this season in the corners, kind of making a mockery of the position. And McKinney's done very well so far. So I'm going to give him props just for his defense, not even just his bat.
Yeah, I would agree. McKinney, I feel like he's doing the same thing that Aledmus Diaz is doing right now, which is playing for a job. He knows that he's looking from the outside in as far as potential starting spot next year. And I don't know what he's tapped into. It certainly isn't the quality hitting coach. It's definitely some sort of inner beast inside of him that's just saying go out there and just leave it all out there on the diamond, because it's either going to be AAA or it's going to be spot starts here and there when guys get injured, unless he can show what he's made of. And he's definitely doing that since the call up, and kudos to him. He's out there, he's swinging, but he's swinging with discipline, and that's really important.
One topic we talk about on the podcast here a lot, Gritch Daddy, Gritchy, Randall Grichuk, who was batting below 100 during a time this season. And when you're batting below 100, you're either getting sent down or you're not even going to sniff 200 for the rest of the year, maybe hit 201, 202. His average right now is 243 on the year. That should be a way bigger story. For this guy to go from batting below 100 to 243, has he done enough for you guys to say, hey, you know what, maybe we should give him an everyday spot in the outfield next year? Maybe he has done enough to make up for that awful slow start. Justin, do you think Gritch Daddy belongs on the team next year?
100%.
100%?
100%.
What about 110%? Oh, I forgot you don't like that.
I don't give
That's
that.
True.
But his defense has been great all season. I just mentioned that with McKinney. An outfield that features primarily a Randall Grichuk in right field / center when Kevin Pillar gets a day off, because it seems like we're going to have Kevin Pillar around for at least one more season. I know Clayton loves that.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll see Kendrys Morales somehow get traded in the offseason, or who knows, maybe Teoscar Hernandez gets moved. We could see some interesting things. It's going to be, I don't think there's going to be anybody on our current Major League Baseball roster who's been in the league for a couple of years is going to be untouchable. Guys like Gurriel may be untouchable,
Mm-hmm.
but say a guy like Randall Grichuk maybe we'll try and trade him. Maybe we'll try and trade Teoscar Hernandez. It's going to be a completely different team on opening day next year versus what we had this season. I'm looking forward to seeing kind of how this front office assembles a pitching staff for next year, because like Patrick has said, we need to send lots of them on a rocket into the sun, and it's going to be a completely different looking staff next season.
And we'll be getting into the front office in a bit because I have some not so nice things to say about them. But let's finish the week that was. That 6-3 loss. Again, Justin Smoke still hitting a home run in the ninth, but it was a little too late. We talked about Smoke. He's probably back. He should have been an all-star this year, but still played pretty good. That 6-1 win, 10 Ks from SRF. That's what we like to call him. Are we going to call him Surf? Is that his new nickname, or are we just going to stick to SRF? Justin, you're the big fan of him. You're the vice president of his fan club. What do you think?
SRF.
SRF, I like that.
I think Surf just sounds not great.
And if we're talking about the like peasant days, Surf is not a good thing.
No.
So 10 Ks from Reed Foley.
Yeah.
He's been so up and down though. Do you trust this guy?
In the long run, yes. This Sean Reed Foley was the guy who's been in the minor leagues all season. I watched the Jays in 30 because we were at the football game that we will not mention the outcome of, just for your sake.
Thank you.
And so after we got home, I watched Jays in 30, and the confidence that he was walking off the field with after every inning that he finished was what I wanted to see. Like, he would strike out a guy in an inning, and he would just strut off that mound like he belonged. And I think that's the biggest thing for these young kids is that, yeah, they might be rookies, but they have the talent, and they act like you belong. Like, if you fake it till you make it, right? And this guy either is faking it big time, or he's showing us shades of what he could be in the future. And he's always going to be, I said last week, he's going to be a 6 or 7 inning guy with a ton of strikeouts. He's not going to be that complete game Roy Halladay-esque pitcher who can go out there and throw 120 pitches and finish 10 innings for you. But he's going to be that guy who's going to give you a ton of strikeouts. He might give up his fair share of fly balls and home runs, but 10 strikeouts in a game, that sure limits the amount of hits the opposing team can get.
He also only walked one batter.
One guy.
And scattered 4 hits too.
Yeah.
Patrick, I'll ask you the same question. Do you trust Sean Reed Foley?
Yeah, of course. I think what we saw in the 6-1 win was more reflective of where he's at in his development. Getting placed in games against the Yankees and the Red Sox is not going to be particularly helpful to our prospects' development. I think we saw it with both SRF and Ryan Borucki in the last couple weeks. Is they got banged up real bad, and it's just because those two teams are so dialed in right now, trying to fight to, for solid playoff positioning, that they were doomed when they hit the mound. It didn't matter what was going to happen. But now in a game against Miami in a park that's a little more pitcher friendly, I feel like this is the Sean Reed Foley that we're going to see next year. I'm not saying he's going to go out and win the Cy Young, but I think we're going to see consistent wheeling and dealing when it comes to strikeouts. And I think, scattering 4 hits as well, and he only walked 1 batter. So again, he's keeping guys off base and he's gunning them down. This is exactly what we expected from him. And this is more reflective of him as a player and not when he got roughed up by, the big bad Yankees and the Red Sox of the world.
See, I disagree with you guys because you guys bring up the point, well, he didn't pitch well against Boston and New York, but we saw the real Sean Reed Foley in this game. Well, guess what? He's going to have to pitch against Boston and New York a bunch. So if he can't pitch against them, why should we trust him? Because those are the big games that we need to win. And if he can't win those games,
For sure.
why can't we trust him?
Well, I feel like, adding to your point there, we have to pitch these guys against those teams to see where they are. And when we saw Borucki, he's been beat up by Boston a couple of times. And that's how they learn. Like, you don't learn by pitching 9 innings every game. You learn by getting hit around a couple of times, right? So these guys are going to make mistakes. And I think once we accept that, it's going to be a little bit of a growing process watching these guys kind of sort of make their mistakes. But once they get through it, it's the better in the long run.
I understand there is growing pains, but I just don't like how up and down he's been. He's been so good, but so bad. He hasn't been like a medium pitcher. And usually young pitchers, they have that kind of medium stretch of like 4 or 5 games where they're like, okay, they're consistently going 5 or 6. Sean Reid-Foley is either, 10 Ks or getting roughed up by the 3rd inning, So that's my only thing about Sean Reid-Foley. Love the guy, love SRF, but I just can't trust him yet. I will soon, but maybe not yet. Luke Maley, 3 for 3 in that game, 3 doubles. Thomas Pannone, are you on the hype train again here, Patrick, or no?
He was solid in his relief effort. Maybe that's where he belongs. Maybe he shouldn't be making starts.
God, we have so many of those guys, though. Well, he shouldn't be a starter. He should be in the bullpen.
We saw Aaron Sanchez start in the bullpen and then move out and have a good year.
Very true.
So I think Patrick said it a couple of times before that it's a good way for these guys to get some experience in. And then once they have that experience, we can try them in a starting role. And if they excel, excellent. If they pull up Joe Biagini and don't, then we send him back to the pen or move on.
It wouldn't be an episode of Bat Flips and Maple Dips if there wasn't a Joe Biagini dig. Oh, I was waiting for that one. I think that was our latest one ever. I know we had an interview, but 52 minutes in without a Joe Biagini dig? What happened to us? Yeah. Let's talk about the series going on right now. Spoiler alert, it's been going horribly. We're playing Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has been one of the hottest teams in baseball, but still 7-1 to Tampa Bay. And they haven't been that good this year. I mean, I know they've been hot, so whatever. But Marcus Stroman, 1 2/3, 6 hits, 4 earned runs. I realize he's got a blister. Yeah. Do you think that is a good enough excuse for his outing?
No, and I mean, there's been some talk this week that the Jays might just shut him down. And honestly, that's probably the best.
They should.
What's the point of... We saw with Aaron Sanchez how many times he tried to come back last season before they just said, you know what, let's just stick a fork in him. He's done. And I think Stroman's at that point right now where he just needs to get healthy and focus on being strong for the new season in 2019.
I can hear Patrick typing right now, trying to look something up.
Guess who's going to WebMD, guys? Do you know how long it takes?
You had an awkward pause for a WebMD search.
I had to go for a WebMD reference. No, but in all seriousness, look, blisters usually take 3 to 7 days to heal. That's usually around the time frame that a pitcher has off between starts.
Right.
Somewhere in the middle there. 5, I think, is the magic number. Yet somehow Marcus Stroman has had this blister go on for, 2 months now? I think we were talking about the blister.
It's been a while.
I know we were talking about it in early August. Right? We're still talking about it now. It's still happening. Shut him down. Obviously, there's some kind of fundamental problem with his delivery, or it's something to do with the stitches in the baseball, whatever it is. I just don't understand why these guys feel like they have to throw so hard that they just keep getting blisters, or they just keep aggravating the same stupid blister over and over again.
Yeah.
It takes 3 to 7 days to heal them, but if you have them every 3 to 7 days, it's never going to heal, and you're just going to pitch like shit. That's what's happening with Stroman.
Let's talk about the game after that, too, because I'm done talking about that 7-1 loss. We only had 4 hits that game. I'm over it. 4-0 then in the second game. Ryan Borucki. Again, here's the thing. We just chirped pitching the entire time. But Ryan Borucki, 6 innings, 3 hits, only 2 walks, 5 Ks. He's been looking great. Him and our SRF. I mean, I still put Borucki ahead of SRF in the Blue Jay Power Rankings right now when it comes to young pitchers. But how do we only have 3 hits on a bullpen day against Tampa? 10 strikeouts on a bullpen day.
Tampa's got a good record. I'm not sure what it is, but I know that they have a winning record on their bullpen days.
That's crazy.
It's working for them. That's why they're 12 games over 500. I think that's what they are right now. We're beating them right now 9-3, which is awesome. Our boy Rowdy Tellez in his first major league at bat picked up a base hit. So good for him. Welcome to the show, bud. So I mean, at least tonight we're doing something. But back to the bullpen day, we saw our boy John Axford have a good opener before we traded him to the Dodgers.
True.
Is it a viable strategy? Like, could this be something we see going forward?
No. Like teams going on bullpen days, I'd be mad. I'd stop watching baseball.
The Rays are 12 games over 500. It's working for them.
And the Drays.
No,
man. I
man.
don't know, man.
I'd rather do the 6-man rotation than I would do bullpen days.
I'm with
Bullpen
ya.
days suck.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I just thought it was an interesting discussion point that there's people saying that, hey, this bullpen thing it's a legit strategy.
Yeah, but it works if you have a good bullpen. If you have a shitty bullpen like we do, a bullpen day means another loss.
Well, it's the thing. The fact is that you're bringing a new guy in every 1 to 2 innings who's throwing 98, and it's a different 98. Like it's keeping hitters off balance. I think that's probably why it's working.
But it only works if you have
Yes.
quality bullpen
Quality staff.
pitchers who can pitch 98, but also be able to throw, a secondary pitch like a cutter or a curveball, or at least have a B+ slider. And the thing is, our bullpen top to bottom, I keep saying this, is just, it's pure shit. And there are a lot of other teams that are dealing with shitty bullpens.
Yeah.
And I just think it works for Tampa right now the same way that having an extremely strong bullpen ended up working out for the Kansas City Royals in 2015, was it, or 16? You guys remember?
I want to say 15.
What year did they win the World Series?
I want to say 16 now. Yeah,
16. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, No, it was 2015, guys, because 2016 we played Cleveland.
Oh, right.
I was right from the beginning. I should have gone with my gut.
See,
Damn
it just seems like such
Yeah.
a distant memory at this point. It's hard to remember when we were
Yeah, I know,
competitive.
because it's almost like watching Infinity War again. You look at all the players from our playoff runs; they've all been snapped off our teams, turned into ash.
Yeah. Good riddance to most of them.
Yeah.
All right, so let's look ahead at the week ahead here. Let's predict this week. Again, we got Tampa.
Let's skip this game because
Yeah.
it's almost over already.
So let's predict the Cleveland series here. We got 4 against Cleveland. Probably won't see Josh.
We won't. No.
He's still playing for the Rubber Ducks. That's what team he's playing for right now.
Yeah, he's on the DL
God.
officially.
How do you think we're going to do against that Cleveland series? Let's hear some predictions, Patrick.
All right. So I'm going to say we're going to go a sparkling 0-4 against Cleveland. Cleveland are gearing up for the playoffs. I know that they're leading the division by a significant amount, but this is the time where all these guys are going to start making their case for awards. We're going to see Corey Kluber. We're going to see Francisco Lindor. We're going to see Ramirez. We're going to see all the big boys, and we're going to get our asses pounded. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, we'll win one game. Just one, though. I'm going to be optimistic again, just like last week, and say we're going to go 1-3. That's the optimist in me.
I bet you we play spoiler and go 3-1.
Hoo-hoo-hoo.
Opposite of last week. Last week, I think I said we'd win one game.
Yeah.
I think we're playing spoiler. I don't know
One-loss
why.
baseball.
I got a good feeling here. Usually we do who's hot, who's not here. We've kind of been going through those guys right now, though. And we had Devin Heroux on the podcast, which made it pretty long. So I'm going to call an audible on behalf of the boys here.
Yeah.
And let's get to the roundtable discussion.
Let's do that.
Because it's going to take us a long time to talk about this. Josh Donaldson. We are going to go around the table, and remember Josh Donaldson is Jay. We're going to ask a bunch of questions, best memories, why do you think this all happened? We're going to get into it, basically. So first of all, what will you remember about Josh Donaldson and his time in Toronto?
I think the MVP coming over for our favorite guys, Mr. Cementhead, among a couple of other pieces like Franklin Barreto. I think coming over and just being dominant and being that third baseman who we hadn't really had in a long time just dominate. We've had some decent third basemen for short stints, put in some good years, but Josh Donaldson won an MVP award.
Mm-hmm.
That's a season that as good of a season as maybe we haven't seen since Hinsky won the Rookie of the Year at third base in terms of productivity, and just a leadership role. He fit in with the core that was Bautista and Encarnacion at the time. He fit right in with those guys in the middle of the lineup, in the clubhouse. He's one of the guys who I think the young players wanted to emulate. Like he does work hard. We can't take that away from Josh, injuries aside. But I think for me, it's just that dominating MVP season is what I'll remember the most about his time in Toronto.
Patrick, what are you going to remember about JD?
I think I agree in that the MVP season sticks out. It's been a really, really long time since the Jays had a star who was great at fielding and great at hitting at the same time. Josh Donaldson in 2015 was the best player in baseball.
Yeah.
All due respect to Mike Trout.
Well, yeah, my boy.
Josh Donaldson did absolutely everything he could to will the Toronto Blue Jays into the playoffs, and he did it twice.
Mhm.
I'm always going to remember the fact that he was borderline MVP for 24 months worth of baseball and baseball-related news, and nobody can convince me otherwise. And my favorite memory with him is going to be the Donaldson dash. When he dashed in,
Yeah.
got into the home plate, and just the walk-off, it was just incredible.
Mine is the same as Patrick's. He stole it at the very end there. He had to throw that little 10-second memory in there and totally
You looked
steal
so
it from
excited,
me.
and then he just took it from you.
Man, I was going to talk about his awesome celly and everything, too, and
Yeah.
how the boys all came out, and it was just, that was awesome. Worst memory, I'll kick things off here. Opening day this week. Not this week. Opening day this year. Him throwing the baseball the way he did, I'll never get that out of my head, because I think of Josh Donaldson as a superhero on the baseball diamond, and he looked like the opposite of a superhero on opening day. He couldn't throw.
No.
He was completely injured. He was completely hurt. I mean, good on him for trying to play for the boys, but he was broken. He was a shell of his former self, and it just sucked to watch. It hurt me, because I love Josh. I love JD. He will go down as one of my favorite Jays of all time. And to see him not even be able to throw to first, like barely make it there with a rainbow, that was tough.
Yeah. It's tough to see. I mean, I think my worst memories are just this recent stuff, just him hearing the news that he chose to do his own rehab outside of the team's high performance department and completely ruptured his calf muscle while trying to do this. It just kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Like, you have this $1 million organization with all this money at its disposal that has this department that's specifically in place to help players either stay in shape, get in shape, or get healthy again. And you don't use it. I can understand that this guy's got a lot of money. He can probably pay for a pretty good doctor, but this team has brought in staff specifically for the purpose of helping baseball players.
Exactly.
So that's probably my worst memory. I don't know if it's what the whole story is. We may never know, but it seems to me like it's almost like a stubborn thing, maybe a pride thing, or I can't put my finger on it. But that's my worst memory is just this recent sort of news that's come to after the fact that he used his own staff instead of ours.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I have an extremely vivid worst memory when it comes to Josh Donaldson, and it occurred on September 4th, 2018, which was yesterday, and it was watching an interview of him wearing a Cleveland Indians uniform. It was just, it gutted me. It caught me by surprise, too. I was just devastated to see him in a different uniform and you could see on his face, you could hear in his voice just how devastated he was that he got traded. And I understand the process. I've always been a fervent supporter of what Atkins and Shapiro have been doing. Seeing Josh Donaldson in a different uniform was the toughest pill to swallow this season, including the fact that the team has been perpetually injured and underperformed all year.
All right, this section of the podcast is like a Good Charlotte song, super emo, super sad. So let's get to something more happy here. We'll go happy, sad, happy, sad. Is he level of excellence worthy? Justin? You're taking a lot of those little pauses today, though.
No, he's not.
The nose exhales where you're just thinking about it.
The MVP is great, but in terms of like overall, like he wasn't here that long. I understand that Roberto Alomar wasn't a Blue Jay for a terribly long time either, but he won 2 World Series with us. He contributed more to the franchise as a whole, and he's still doing that. He's coaching youth baseball camps for the Blue Jays. He goes on their winter tours. He's still involved. He's our Hall of Famer. Whereas I don't see Josh Donaldson as that guy, and his career is far from over. But if I had to make a decision, if I was in the Blue Jays brass or the organization of Rogers, I'm not putting Josh Donaldson at the level of excellence. No chance.
Patrick?
I wonder to what extent the bitter divorce we've experienced is going to have an impact on his legacy as a Jay. When it comes to the level of excellency, I honestly think he does deserve it, and the reason why is just because he saved this team from being a mediocre franchise that was going to be over 500, but only just. He turned everything around. He brought us back to the playoffs. We won playoff games because of him. He was in town the same amount of time as Roberto Alomar. And in terms of individual performance, Josh Donaldson arguably outperformed Alomar in the 4 years. I recognize that there is a considerable amount of injury time that Donaldson was underperforming or not even on the roster because he was on the DL. But if you look at what he did with the team in the time that he had when he wasn't hurt, he saved Blue Jays baseball.
Yeah, but is the level of excellence just based on on-field stuff, though? I mean, like with Alomar and other guys like Joe Carter, they might be retired for the last 15, 20 years now, but they're still involved with baseball and with the team. And I think that says a lot about just like the character. And who knows, maybe Josh will be that guy someday. Maybe not with the Blue Jays. Maybe he stays in Cleveland just hypothetically for the rest of his career, and he becomes involved with that city and that organization after he finishes his baseball career. But for me, like one of the big reasons I'm not putting Josh on the level of excellence is just because outside of his on-field performance, I don't feel like he's done much for the Blue Jays.
I'm going to keep my answer short and sweet. Yep, he does deserve to be up there. Patrick, your rebuttal?
I don't know. I like Justin's point. I get what he's saying when it comes to the extracurricular activities. You can certainly say those things about, the Joe Carters, the Roberto Alomars, certainly Dave Stieb coming out of retirement in 1998 to pitch. You can't really say that about Roy Halladay, but Halladay's legacy with the Blue Jays is bulletproof, and there's nothing anybody you could say to convince me otherwise. I think we're all on the same page with that.
Definitely.
I don't know what Tony Fernandez has done outside of his time with the Jays, so I don't know. Like, I agree that a player should be contributing more than just on field when it comes to like getting into the Jays level of excellency. At the same time, I think we'd have to wait a long time to kind of be able to look back and analyze Donaldson's impact. There's no doubt he was a leader in the locker room. There was no doubt he was the reason why this team performed as well as it did for those couple years. I really don't know what level of charity he put in. I'm sure there was some. He wasn't our Roberto Clemente nominee this year. That went to Kevin Pillar. So I don't know. Like Justin is starting to cast some doubt on my thoughts. I say yes, but I think we need more time to pass to see whether or not he does cycle back to Toronto at some point in his career or comes back to the city after the fact.
This kind of almost feels like a Vince Carter-esque situation where everyone's kind of just mad at him for, not that Vince asked for a trade, that's a completely different thing, but it took about 10 to 15 years for Raptor fans to fully, and some people haven't forgiven him, to forgive Vince for leaving. And maybe like the whole Josh thing will just take some time for people to say, like, you know what, let's remember the good, because Josh brought good times to baseball in Toronto, much like Vince brought good times to basketball. So I think it's just one of those situations where we're super bitter right now. Most of us are at some level, and I think it's just going to take us a few years, maybe a few months, who knows, to get over this.
All right, next question here. This is a two-part question.
Yeah.
Who is to blame for the Josh Donaldson divorce, and what do you think happened that led to such a bitter divorce? So start with who is to blame, and then go on to what do you think happened. I think it's Ross Adkins on a power trip, thinking that our youngsters are going to be that in a bag of potato chips, and they will be, but we still need veteran leadership on the team. And I just think that Josh would have fit in so well with this team as a DH or something like that to go along with Vladdy and teach him how to play third base the right way. I just think Ross Adkins is to blame for it, and I think why it happened is because, again, Josh looked so bad on opening day. Josh looked horrible, and Ross Adkins probably saw that and was like, you know what, I can't have this guy playing third when I got Vladdy in the minors, so why am I going to keep this gimp out here? But at the same time, Josh did so much for that team, and it just seemed like there's no loyalty in baseball. It's a business. I get that, but man, the Jays went through so much, and Josh took us out of that. That's my 2 cents on it. But
yeah, the thing is I'm one of those people who thinks that Josh should have been traded before this season even started, when his value was still more than a player to be named later. God, that sucks. But I understand, but do you think Josh would have done something similar to what Tulo said? And like, if I can't play third base, I'll pack my bags and go home. Like, would Josh Donaldson play DH with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at third base? Would the
No.
Yeah? So there's no room for Josh Donaldson on a Blue Jays team next season, with having Kendrys Morales and Russell Martin under shitty contracts. There's no room on a 25-man roster, let alone a 40-man roster, for a guy who's going to make. Well, who should make $20 million, but likely won't get that now, unless he has an insane September and playoff run. I don't really think that there's anybody to blame for this divorce. It was something that was almost inevitable. It was like when we traded Roy Halladay. It was going to happen. Everyone knew we were going to trade Roy because he wasn't going to re-sign with us. Unfortunately, he wanted to go win. He was at the point in his career where he had been on a crappy team for the first 10 years of his career, and he wanted to go win.
I think the Roy Halladay decision's a bit different because Roy Halladay grew up in the Jays system. He was
True.
a draft pick of the Jays. Everyone loved Roy Halladay, and all the fans thought, this guy deserves better. Our team is so junk. Let's send him away.
Fair.
And at least we got, at the time, some great prospects in return.
Right.
At the time, Kyle Drabeck was a top-notch pitching prospect. He's got baseball ties, his family, baseball family, and he had some filthy stuff. And for a while, it looked like he was going to pay off, but he obviously did not.
Yeah.
They got some other pieces in that trade as well. We got that Merriweather guy, who's 26, had Tommy John this year.
Yeah.
That's who we're going to get for our former MVP and face of the
Well,
team.
it's not
I understand
confirmed.
he's damaged goods.
Not confirmed.
But I think it's so different. I mean, Donaldson, I think, still had some good years left with the team, and it's an exciting time to be a Jays fan because in 2 or 3 years, the Jays are going to be really good again, and I wish Josh could have been a part of that. Doc was with the team for so long where it's like, you know what, Doc, you paid your dues.
Yeah,
You can
and then
go.
some.
Because we're not going to be good for a long, long time. The Jays will be good soon. And to do Josh like that, I don't know. Patrick, are we on here? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think?
I feel like nobody is to blame for this situation so much as we have to look at a number of different factors that took place. There are some facts that are a bit muddled, especially by Toronto media, because it's just way easier to shank the outgoing player than it is to criticize the guy whose job security is pretty comfortable. When it comes to JD, I think it was a critical error for the Blue Jays organization to say, yes, Josh, go ahead and use your own people for your rehab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Justin said, there is a reason why those people are in those positions. There is a reason why those positions within the organization exist at all. It's because these are the people, the medical staff, who are going to take care of the players when they get hurt. Josh wanted to go off and do his own thing. I'm sure he probably thought that he would be able to get healthier faster this way. It didn't work. And it completely destroyed any value that he has as a third baseman in Major League Baseball. Excuse me. Kind of hard to talk about this.
Yeah.
But it's just frustrating when we know something like Josh decided not to use the team trainers. It's really tempting to blame Josh Donaldson for this whole situation, but at the same time, Atkins and Shapiro had ample time to work out some kind of extension
Mm-hmm.
or give JD some kind of reassurance that he was going to be around for the long haul. There is no reason why he shouldn't be on the team now beyond the fact that he completely botched his rehab assignment for the last 12 months. And it really kind of shakes my faith in what Tulo is doing right now, because I have no idea if he's working with his own trainers or with the team trainers. And now we have a bigger problem within the organization, which is, do the players trust the medical the medical staff? And
Right.
if they don't, why? And if they do, why aren't they using them? This is such a shitstorm that's going to take years to unpack. And it's neither Atkins or Shapiro or Josh Donaldson's fault that there is a bitter divorce. This was a guy who was passionate about playing in Toronto, and it was taken away from him when he didn't want that to be the case. He probably knew this was coming. It doesn't mean he has to like it.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for Josh Donaldson at all in this situation.
No.
Like it's maybe it sucks to say that, but like Clayton mentioned, there's no loyalty in sports, and there can't be. If you can show loyalty to an extent, but if that loyalty is going to hurt your franchise in the long run, like not trading Josh Donaldson would have. Like, we should have been able to trade Josh back in June when he could have been healthy, if he wouldn't have got injured. We would have traded him long before this revocable waiver trade deadline. And maybe if we would have traded him back then, we wouldn't be talking about this like we are now, because it wouldn't have been as big of a deal. This whole thing got drug out so long because of the injury that we almost couldn't trade him, because he came back 3 days before the deadline. It took him like 4 months to come back from a calf injury.
Yeah.
And this whole thing, the only thing I really feel bad for is the Blue Jays front office for having to wait for him to get healthy so they could trade him.
True.
That's the real victim here is the fact that they were handcuffed by a guy's calf muscle.
Don't defend Atkins, please.
I'll
don't.
defend them all I want.
He got blessed with an absolute gem of a farm system.
Yeah.
And he's gonna get made look so good. Like, he's gonna look so good because of Anthopoulos'
Well,
picks.
and they've done well in the couple years they've been here, like with Jordan Groshans and Adam Kloffenstein, and getting a couple of good players like David Polino, one of the guys we got for Osuna, is in the bullpen like now.
True.
He got activated today.
The one thing is, I understand that it is a business. Again, I said
Yeah.
that. It's a business. And I understand why this all went down. I do. I'm a sports guy.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, being a Jays fan during those 2000s, early 90s years where we were awful, and then all of a sudden, we were awesome.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it was because of one guy. I know Edwin and Jose were there, and I know there were a lot of other pieces. Our pitching was great. But it just seemed like Josh Donaldson put us over the top, and I'll never forget that.
Fair.
Josh was the guy. He was the guy. So last question here, because we're running so long. Does the end of his time represent something bigger for the team? And did the team do JD dirty? I think this kind of shows that our front office isn't as good as we thought it would be when we hired them, because they didn't deal with this properly. I'm not going to say that, like, again, we could have got something better in return. I won't say that. They should have traded him in June. If they knew they were going to trade him, and if they saw him on opening day play like that, trade him earlier. And I think that it kind of shows that they can't make a decision, because maybe they were like, you know what, we like Josh. He's the face of the team. And maybe they couldn't make that decision. Maybe they were a little attached to him. They didn't see the business side of it. We don't want a GM like that. We want a GM that's going to take a stance. That's going to be like, we like the player. We're going to have that emotional attachment to him. We're keeping him. Or we want to make the business decision. I don't think these guys can figure either one of those things out. I think they're stuck somewhere in the middle. Patrick, do you agree? Or
No, not at all. I feel like hindsight is always going to be 2020, and it's easy for us to criticize the mistakes or the bad trades or the signings that didn't quite work out, or the players who ended up struggling, who we ended up promoting too fast, or whatever. We can't look at this season as just, well, Atkins and Shapiro sucked. They are far from the worst executives in MLB. If anything, they've proven time and time again that they have the ability to maybe not rebuild this team on the fly, but they certainly put their best effort forward during the offseason to bring in guys like Diaz, and promoting Gurriel and things like that to try to make this team as competitive as they could. Mm-hmm. The problem was that there were way too many injuries and the bullpen sucked ass and it just fell apart. The expectations they put on guys like Biagini and Clippard, they just couldn't deal with it. And then on top of that, there was the shit show with Osuna, and they did everything they could to try to sign Josh Donaldson before the season started. And then when the season started, he didn't want to sign. He didn't want to negotiate during the season. Totally understandable. Everybody was trying to hedge their bets, and everybody in this situation, from top to bottom, from the fans who pay to go see them play, to Josh Donaldson himself, to Shapiro and Atkins, and to the medical staff who are responsible for training and developing our players and making them get healthy, everybody lost. I've never seen anything like this in baseball, and I doubt we're ever going to see something like this happen within the organization again, but everybody lost.
I don't think using an example like Aledmus Diaz, like defending Ross Atkins, he picked up him, guys like that are a dime a dozen. Yeah. I just don't like the fact that Anthopoulos set up this awesome farm system for these guys, and they're going to get all the credit for it. See, people are going to say, oh man, they're such good GMs, they're such good front office guys, look at our farm system. They did shit for our farm system. We don't know the guys that they drafted. We don't know how good they're going to be. Yeah. We don't know how good this Groshans kid's going to be. We never do. They're still young. We have done a great job of building up a farm system, but it wasn't because of those two. I just think that a lot of people are defending him right now. Oh, they need to do this, they need to do that. They were put into a pretty cushy situation right now, and this was kind of their first test. Well, I think the Osuna thing was maybe their first test, and I think they did a good job there. Yeah. So again, I'm not going to... I hate crapping all over people, but they did a good job there. But I just think they dropped the ball so much on this. I don't know, Justin.
I'm still going to defend this front office for this. Their hands were tied here. Like we couldn't trade him because he was injured. Like you can't trade an injured player, and the fact that he was injured for so long, just it's a rock and a hard place for anybody who has to deal with trading a player that isn't healthy. Like you're stuck. You can't do anything about it, unfortunately. So it sucks. It's a crappy situation that's not going to be over for a while. We're going to be talking about this at least in Blue Jay land for the next few months, and if anything comes out of it in the free agency market in the offseason, if more stories come to light, I'm sure it's going to get all brought back up to the surface. It's going to be one of those things that's going to boil in a pot for a long time.
All right, I think that's just about it because we've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes. Again, thanks to Devin Heroux from CBC for joining us. Good Sasky boy. Patrick, you're up next. You got to get one of your Maritimers on the show. So, wow. You're really slacking, bud. Pick it up. We're just kidding, bud.
You know what we'll do? We'll see if we can't get Alan Doyle on the horn.
Wouldn't that be something?
That won't happen. Alan Doyle's too busy combing his hair. On behalf of Patrick, on behalf of Justin, this is Clayton. Thanks for listening to episode 14 already. Yeah. Holy shit. Thanks for listening, guys. Again, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play Music, iTunes. Just look up Bat Flips and Maple Dips. It'll show up. Thanks for listening. Have a good one. We'll see you next week.